I'm Richard Randall. Welcome back to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker. She's the host of the program, and this is the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate. It does it with Barb Schlinker, the owner of Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty. Most homeowners don't sell homes very often. In fact, some never have sold a home before. What are the typical questions that you get from home sellers about selling their homes?
Well, Richard, the first caveat when selling a home is it depends on where you are. So you might have sold a home in another state, but every state has different laws about properties and different rules about how the process works. So I think it's really important, especially if it's the first time or even second time that you sold a home, to sit down and be real comfortable with the process. We actually built out systems to give the clients more information. I actually created a series of videos. So as we go along in the contract process, they get videos, okay, because they're not going to remember what I said, most of what I said on the first meeting, because it's too much information. So I created a series of different videos that go out at different times that kind of cover, okay, we're on the market. This is what you can expect. Or we're getting ready to go on the market. This is what we can expect. Okay, now you're starting to show. This is what you can expect. I have fun with that because sometimes I tell them up front, look, not every agent will sit down with a buyer and ask them what they are looking for. And the state does not even require the agent to verify that the buyer has the ability to buy a home, even after they write a contract. Can you believe that, Richard?
That is amazing to me.
It,
I learned more things from you that I had no idea about that.
right. So, the seller, of course, is getting an appointment to show their home, and their assumption is that, oh, this buyer loves this home, they want to see this home, it's the kind of home that they're looking for. But actually, that may not be true. I just yesterday, I got feedback from a showing on my beautiful ranch that has gorgeous views, but it's priced over $1 million. That the buyer was actually looking for a two-story. Okay, why are you looking at a ranch? Did they not even ask the buyer that question? So it's a waste of everybody's time, and it's disappointing to the seller because they are assuming that every agent actually carefully finds out from the buyer what their needs are. But the truth is, a lot of these buyers will somehow get connected with a random real estate agent online, right? And the very first question is, hey, is that home available? And the agent goes, let me check. So they look it up, on the keyboard, they check it out, and they're like, oh, yeah, when would you like to see it? So many times, the very first meeting of the agent and the buyer is at the house. They don't know what kind of house they're looking for. They don't know if they can buy a couch on Craigslist or let alone their home, right? They're just doing it, what I call Pop-Tart agents, at the hope that maybe this buyer likes the home and maybe they'll buy this home or maybe they'll buy some other home, right? It's a way of making a connection for sales. So that happens all too often. And we have a lot of problems with showing. So part of what these series of videos do is they kind of deep dive into what you can expect, because I'm the one that gets the darts thrown at me when other agents make mistakes like leave doors unlocked, leave lights on, use the restroom and don't flush. Things like that happen all the time. So I have to let them know in advance, hey, this could happen. Don't be surprised, right? And it does happen. So that way, it's unprofessional. I know when those kind of things take place, but at least they know it's coming and it's not a big surprise. But they're not going to be thinking about that when they're getting their house ready for sale. They're going to be thinking about that when it's time to show. And so that's why I put together this series of videos for my clients, and they get them every step of the way. And that helps with some of the questions. But just in general, what are some of the good questions that a seller should ask? First of all, when's the best time to sell? We covered that on the last segment. It really is when you're ready. Don't worry about it. And I find that most people won't make a move unless they have a destination in mind, right? They're not going anywhere until they have a place to go because they don't want to be rendered homeless or have to arrange for temporary housing. So that's one thing. And typically from the time that you go on the market, could be anywhere from a week to a couple of months to get a contract. Once you get a contract to closing is about a month. So it's not an overnight thing. It could take as little as 30, 35 days. It could take as long as 3 months. It really just depends. Another common question I get all the time is, how's the real estate market? And, the real estate market depends on the house. In general, the market's pretty strong. It leans slightly towards a seller's market. However, it also varies according to the motivation of the seller, the motivation and the needs of the buyer. There's a lot of dynamics there, but we try to give kind of a general idea of, okay, we actually have data for every zip code, for every neighborhood that we can share with the seller. So then when we sit down with them and we talk about some of the important decisions like pricing and positioning the home, they can make the best choice to get to reduce the time that they're selling. I'm sorry, to reduce the time that they're showing the home, because that's probably one of the bigger pain points for most home sellers, is to deal with showing after showing until we finally get a buyer. If you do it right, if all the stars align, you can actually sell the home relatively quickly. Another question that's a good question to ask, which would be, what information about my home should I disclose to potential buyers? So we have written disclosures that we use. And in general, you have to disclose anything that's broken, right? Or sometimes anything that was broken and you fixed it, like an insurance claim, roof damage, water intrusion in the house. You're always better off being completely open and honest about the condition of the home rather than kind of, shuffling it under the rug. But in general, they want to know about things that are broken, any contamination, like if you had a radon test is a big thing right now, water penetrating the home, source of water, that kind of stuff. But we sit down and actually go over the disclosure and disclose it. I had one client that I just closed in which she ran a daycare in her house. So because of that, the governor required a special lead test on every single faucet. Now that is not customary. We don't do lead tests typically on homes, especially of all the good water that we have here. However, he wanted to disclose it, which I think was a really good idea. The buyer's like, okay, do I need to care about this? And everything was resolved, but he still wanted them to have all the information. It's always good to disclose things like if you've updated anything, like, when I go in and show a house, I'm taking a look at those things. What's the condition of the windows? How old is the furnace? How old is the hot water heater? Those kind of things typically are expenses that the buyer may have to update later. So if you have improved those things, it's really good information for the buyer to know about. It gives them a warm fuzzy that they made the right decision buying your home versus going out and buying a brand new house that has everything new. So anything that you've improved, appliances, electrical, I also like to disclose anything that's not obvious. Some not obvious things would be like if you upgraded the insulation, they're not going to be able to see the insulation when they look at the home. That kind of stuff is just good to know. Another good question, which I get all the time, which is a whole nother segment, how should I prepare my home for sale? Well, it really depends. It depends on where you plan to price the home and what your motivation is. But in general, most buyers don't want a fixer-upper unless you have the home priced well below market, and then they will jump on it and pay a premium. So we will go over that when we meet and we talk about what are your motivations, what are your goals. We'll talk about what to do and what not to do to maximize your dollars when you sell it, all that kind of stuff. But in general, most buyers just want to move in, drop their stuff, and get on with their life. So I would definitely recommend some realistic, mostly cosmetic improvements. Things like wallpaper and borders are very dated looking now, but some wallpaper is actually, it's coming back in style, and some of it is very muted and it may not matter. Definitely fix broken things. And we help you get ready for pictures. We don't normally photograph the inside of closets or the inside of garages. So that's kind of your happy space to store stuff, but we'll go over all of that. And that's part of our service. So if you are thinking of making a move and you'd like to get a free in-home consultation on what to do and what not to do to get your house ready for sale, we'll give you a good idea what your home will sell for, go over all the closing costs, and also share with you all the buyers that we could present your home to, including our buyers in waiting, buyers on Zillow and Realtor, citywide buyer agent network buyers, and our cash buyers, and all of our programs. It's a free service and you're never obligated to sell. So if you are thinking of that, call us at 719-301-3900 or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. My name is Barb Schlinker. I'm the host of this show, Your Real Estate Voice. We're talking about the top questions a first-time home seller should be asking, or really any home seller. And next up, we're going to cover some questions, including questions about value and what's the difference between a tax assessed value and a market value, negotiations, and commissions. Richard?
We're discussing what are some of the top questions that first-time home sellers ask when they're considering selling their homes. Barb, tell us a little bit more about the difference between an assessed value and a property tax. Tell us the difference between an assessed value and why it's different from what a house is worth.
Well, an assessed value is a valuation for the county for property tax purposes. By state law, it has to be 18 to 24 months behind the current market values, which normally is less, although we had that anomaly a few years ago when the market was booming and the rates were low. But in general, property tax values could be higher or lower than the current market value. So that's part of what we do is we sit down and we take a look and we compare apples to look at historic sales. And we also take a look at what's currently on the market, like what's your competition right now, to help you make really good decisions about how to position the home price-wise. But market value is what the buyer's willing to pay. And tax value is just for the tax man. And in general, it's a good idea to price what I call realistically versus optimistically to be the best home available in the neighborhood. Another question, should a home seller leave room for negotiations when pricing a home? I get this question a lot, and I hear it, I understand it. I feel like the seller will sell more quickly and at a better price when they price what I call realistically versus optimistically. However, it's at the end of the day a seller decision. I give them all the data, they make the call, and we go from there. Another great question, and some agents will go out and say, you should make your home available to be shown all the time. Well, I don't agree with that. You have to make this work for you. There are people that are living in the home while they're selling it. They've got kids and dogs and cats and normal lives. And a lot of people now are working from home and they can't just stop their work and get up and deal with the showing. So what I recommend is that you make the schedule work for you. Most agents are going to reschedule and come back if the buyer really, really wants it. Keep in mind that a lot of these agents are just showing to meet a buyer and they don't care if the buyer really, really wants it, right? Plus, if the time doesn't work for you when the buyer's available or in town, the agent could always go and get their smartphone and do a video or a walkthrough for their buyer using FaceTime and some of the technology that we have these days, without having to make it inconvenient for you. So I always say, make the schedule work for your lives. And actually, the less available it is, the more people want it, in my view. And then as far as what you should say when you're face-to-face with a buyer, most agents tell you to leave for any showing, but you don't necessarily have to do that. It's just, it's a good practice because the buyers kind of want to open the cabinet doors and, they want to look around and feel free to make comments. However, if you can't leave, it's okay. Just get out of the way and say you'll be available for questions about the house. The reason why agents are afraid of it is they're afraid that you're going to share your motivation for sell and hurt the negotiations. And then the cost of selling the home in general is these three things: commission, settling up taxes, settling up HOA, title insurance, and if the buyer negotiated closing cost. That is it. The buyer should be paying their own closing cost. So we'll go over all that when it's time to meet. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call at 719-301-3900. We offer a free in-home consultation on how to get your house ready for sale, and we'll go over all the costs and give you a really good idea what a buyer will pay for your home. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And if you're thinking of making a move, call Barb at 719-301-3900 or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. Barb's the host of the program. Reach out to her. When we come back, we'll be talking about the top 5 things to know before you buy into a home with HOA dues.